Welcome back on the AM show. We get into our big stories now. And I decided to do black, and guess what? Sweetie Abachi also tries to do black.
Denise was in black too as well this morning. It's a black affair.
Yeah, I mean, this is becoming a bit...
Yeah.
We must find our crystal ball. But we're getting into that issue in respect of that latest L.I. when it comes to the use of sirens, among others. And we're going to host our guests this morning as we get into the related issues. But before we get there, Sweetie Abachi, what do you make of it? Some people have railed against it. Others say, like Honorable Apiakubi, that there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, what's informing this? All over the world, talk about USA, UK, Germany. It's just emergency and critical services that use these sirens. So what's really propelling us to exempt ministers and MPs from using the road the normal way that we do? But I want to understand from them, and where there are exceptions, it's only in emergency cases. Really, I want to understand.
And here we are talking of even without speed limits. Yeah. That is a crucial issue. But let's bring it into this conversation surrounding this controversy. Franklin Cudjoe, he is president of Imani Africa. He joins the conversation. Mr. Cudjoe, good morning. Oh, it appears we lost Franklin Cudjoe. We'll try and get him right back on the line. We're going to have a conversation with him. We'll also be joined by an expert on road traffic analysis. He is the CEO of Top Tech Logistics, Transport and Logistics. Cesil Gabra joins the conversation. Mr. Gabra, good morning to you.
I think we have Franklin on
Okay, so we have Franklin Cudjoe back. Yeah. Mr. Cudjoe, good morning. Hello, Franklin Cudjoe, if you can hear me, good morning. Okay, so we'll try to work that out. Franklin Cudjoe is president of Imani Africa. He has had his own concerns about it, just as many people in Ghana have expressed their concerns about this latest L.I., which, if it goes through the processes in Parliament and if it is approved, then becomes binding. And the question is this what we want? Because then I've heard some people ask, for example, I believe it is Professor Bafwa Jimanduya asked, can you imagine 275 MPs on our roads doing this, heading to Parliament, sirens blaring, speeding with no limits? And there have been instances in the past where some of them have been involved in some accidents and road traffic situations, right? So then it would mean that, you stop the person, I'm an MP. You stop the person, I'm a minister. It could degenerate.
Yes, there are too many for us to not, they would obstruct our easy identification of those who actually need access when we're in a gridlock or something. So I think we should take a critical look at this, if it's really what we need. And if so, what are we basing it on, and how do we actually regulate it so that it doesn't get out of hand? But I think we have Franklin on the line.
Cudjoe is back. Yeah. Yes. Mr. Cudjoe, a very good morning to you.
It's a pleasant morning here as well. Good morning to yourself and Sweetie.
All right. Let's get right down to it. Why are you opposed to this L.I. from what you've seen? You started sharing on social media. Why are you averse to it?
It's funny, isn't it? I didn't even add anything to the post. I only said, this is what I found. So I've not even made any official statement concerning whether I like it, I dislike it, or
okay.
Not so tell us now.
But somehow, of course, it was decoded. Somebody thought I was being mischievous. In any case, look, frankly speaking, I was amazed really when I saw that. And I asked myself, exactly what are we in a hurry to pass this L.I. for, really? And the argument that have come so far, I've read some arguments made by certain senior MPs who are friends, and I laughed at them. I actually was mocking one this morning, actually. And I said, well, wait a minute. Are you seriously telling us that you want to be giving preferential treatment on our bad roads, badly lit roads in terms of, poor visibility, just everything that is bad on our roads? Where the roads isn't done properly, I don't think this particular L.I. serves its purpose at all. And I think it's unconscionable that we would even think of something like this. All the arguments that have been advanced that I've read so far in support of it, frankly speaking, falls flat. I can't believe that we Anyway, don't forget, Parliament some time back used to do so many things. And someone, who was it that said, I've forgotten my government lessons. Who was it that said the only thing Parliament cannot do is to change a man into a woman? Was it Montesquieu? I've forgotten who it was. In any case, I am, I'm still having a good laugh. So, look, it doesn't make sense. I don't think this bill, this L.I. should actually pass. And if they try passing it, I'm sure many people would rise up against it. Because, frankly speaking, it's just unconscionable. So those are just my... In fact, you are the first person that's spoken to officially about this and then expressing my opposition to.
Well, we're grateful you've confirmed to us on this matter. But let's look at... So you've stated that the reasons they cite, for example, having to attend meetings in Parliament and the fact that they need to get about their work in the national interest, among others that have been filed. You have Apia Kubi, for example, one of the members of Parliament, stating that he is for it. And look at it. It's not just the members of Parliament. Ministers are in there, the President, the Vice, the Speaker of Parliament, the Chief Justice. Don't you think this ought to be afforded them because of the capacity, the offices they occupy?
Well, it gets to a point, I'm sure as we move along the line, it started with the executive, and then now we're adding the Chief Justice and whatever, the judges and all. Now we're adding MPs, and before I see assemblymen who also decide to be part of it, ward committee members, constituency chairman of political parties. Before you realize, this becomes absurd. I mean, and so where are we going to end? So maybe I'm stretching the argument. But frankly speaking, really, that they want to go about their work efficiently. Don't forget, my good brother, that 3 years ago, the presidency actually issued a directive that no minister, no MP should use a siren at all. Do you remember? Just Google it, you see that story. So what changed? I'm surprised. What actually changed? That all of a sudden we should accord our dear honorables the opportunity to speed without limit on these bad roads. It's even a danger to them, isn't it? And then at the same time, just make noise during the day by disturbing the peace. Already people are suffering on these roads anyway. I mean, what's the point in... look, it doesn't make sense. Look.
So for you, it makes absolutely...
You've lived outside. Look, I recall when I used to do some work with the IE in the UK, the original IE, and met some MPs. The original IE was not far from the Parliament houses anyway. But I recall that sometimes when an MP, I was going to meet an MP, typically he's either riding a bicycle or he's probably taking a train, right? And then we meet a chat. I mean, if imagine the houses of Parliament in the UK, I mean, being asked, members are being asked to use sirens and no speed limit. How chaotic is that going to be? So I don't know whether on the continent, Africa, whether other houses of Parliament are contemplating something like this. I don't know. So
right.
Look, this is not. They shouldn't pursue. It doesn't make sense at all.
Well, maybe before we wrap with you, I just want to add this bit. So if you look at other jurisdictions, I mean, in the UK, US, and others where Sweetie Abochi was just referencing, they stick to the limits just as everybody else. I've heard reports and read, in fact, in preparing for this conversation, where secretaries or ministers in the UK were stopped because and this was a temporary zone where a speed limit had been removed from 60 plus to 40. A minister or a secretary flouted it and got arrested. I mean, no one is above the law and what pertains. So when you look at other jurisdictions versus ours, is there any case, since you are so well traveled, are there cases you've seen which you think could substantiate this in any way? And I want to add this, would it also mean that if they took off the speed limit cap, or brought a cap on it, it would make more sense to you? Just some quick thoughts before you take
None of them. In fact, I would never accept any of either of the two. I mean, what exactly are you going to? And in any case, if you are going to work at Parliament, I mean, all these MPs sometimes live close by anyway. Besides, if you know that the meeting starts at 10, what stops you from? It's not you are the one who's driving, right? Get ready, get prepared. You have a policeman, you have a driver, you have all sorts of things. Now you want to bamboozle your way through traffic. Fix the roads. Make sure that the roads are widened. And I mean, this is the only country in most of Africa that I've seen, at least in recent times, that the street lights are just virtually non-existent. I can't believe. Recently, I nearly died on the motorway. It was pitch dark. And you want to tell me that my MP says the dead of night is in a hurry, so driving on that very cantankerous road, he wants to speed without limit and make noise throughout the night. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know what habits you are copying from, but certainly speaking, this just doesn't make sense.
Franklin, the argument...
I am going on a campaign. I'm actually now going to, since I realized that there may be other bills like that, I'm now going to start a full project. I'll look at all the bills that have been laid and fish out these very interesting ones and bring them for discussion.
Okay. I mean, the argument is that the frequent traffic jam here in the city it sort of delays movement, and the business of Parliament and these ministers is important. But let's listen to Andiapia Kubi, the MP for Asante Achim North, and why he says this is important, and then we'll come back for your response.
Indeed, I was privileged to have joined the executive for the last 4 years in the first term of President Nana Akufo-Addo. And I know the shadow of work that ministers go through and how they postpone meetings outside ministries trying to finish their regular job in office and finish all and be confronted with limited time to reach the next destination for the next official duty. You subject such people into the conditions of traffic on the road. Such people cannot meet the deadlines. And therefore, it is imperative for us to give some access to them to be able to meet the deadlines. And let us not forget, if deadlines are not met, it goes to undermine the performance of such public officers or ministries or institutions to the detriment of the expectations of the general public. So if there is any justification in giving special access to any of the Article 71 office holders, then it presumes that all the members of Article 71 office holders ought to be given the same access, so that in the discharge of their duties, we can hold them and we can expect that the productivity will improve because they are not impeded on the road. And we have witnessed situations where some members of parliament and some even state ministers and even some judges have been arrested on the road because they are trying to meet their work schedules. And you go to the police, you go to the Attorney General, you go to the IGP. He says, I implement the law as given. And that I cannot help the situation because the law says that. So the remedy is to amend the law to make it lawful for people like that to be able to have special access where necessary. In fact, during the consideration of the bill, I had proposed that we even add doctors on call. Because in a situation where somebody has been brought to a hospital, an emergency, and the doctor is held up in traffic, the amount of work done is zero because the patient is there, but the doctor is held up in traffic. It's important for us to consider that. I had argued this vehemently in the committee, save that the difficulty was to find who is a doctor on call and who is a doctor not on call. And for that reason, they did not understand my position of including doctors on call. But we are all privy to situations where people have been ferried by ambulances to hospitals, going to meet empty halls or consulting room without doctors. So it's important that as we bring them, the sick ones, let us also bring the people who come and work on them. And that was my understanding and my argument.
One holders. How do we reconcile that? Maybe the bad roads are the reason why we need to give them the excuse to get to their, various offices on time to discharge their duties. Your response to this?
I think I caught the last 10, 15 seconds of what you were saying. But if I heard him right, look, I don't understand what emergency situation he's even talking about. In any case, look, there are private persons who, when they really want to get to somewhere urgent and all of that, they sometimes even hire the services of policemen, right? And then they're given those access. Maybe some exception could be made under rare circumstances. And even then, the point really is that, asking for this blanket thing, frankly speaking, it doesn't make sense. Look, the next thing they may be asking for is that, everywhere is jammed, and so they should be giving helicopters, and that we should probably invest in that for them as well. What type of thinking is this? I don't get it. But that's Parliament for you. There's a story about the famous French Parliament that at one point in time, candlestick makers went to see parliamentarians and told them that the sun was competing against their candles. So they should pass a law to ban the sun. Okay, this is a clear, some sort of absurd policies, laws that are passed.
Right.
Parliaments all over the world. This obviously is not. I don't think it makes sense at all, and they will just be angering a lot of people if they go ahead.
Okay, so some exceptions can be made. That's what I take from your submission. So we're talking
about.
Well,
the exception here is very thin, really. I'm just saying that. Look, I've seen. If I remember, the police actually warned people not to be making noise with sirens. Yeah. The only ones that should be respected is when you have a police a rider ahead of you, and that's legitimate. But we shouldn't make the exception the rule. This is what they are trying to do, that all parliamentarians should be given opportunity to make noise, and then at the same time, ooze their way through traffic and all kinds of. I don't want to get into the conversation about the
Franklin,
values.
Please hold for us. Ben?
Franklin, so just hold. We also have Cesil Gabra. He's CEO, Top Tech Transport and Logistics. Mr. Gabra, good morning. Hello, Mr. Cesil Gabra. Good morning to you. Okay, so you would have to unmute Mr. Cesil Gabra so we can hear and then we can communicate with you. Mr. Gabra, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for making the time to join the conversation. What do you make of this amendment of Regulation 74 of L.I. 2180, which will now permit the fitting of sirens or bells as warning appliances on specific classes of vehicles, including those owned by the justices of the Supreme Court, members of Parliament, ministers? And I'll actually take a look at Article 71, office holders. I'll give a full list because then it will give us a broader idea of who and who, how far this could spread, even apart from looking at what the amendment regulation 74 says. But your initial thoughts on this? Hello, Cesil. Mr. Gabra, can you hear me? All right, so we'll work on Mr. Gabra's sound and then get back. But, sweetie, here we are. These are some of the proposals. If you look at Section 39(3), it says a siren or bell may be fitted as a warning appliance and used on the following classes of motor vehicles. A, motor vehicle used for official purposes by the head of state, vice president, speaker of parliament, chief justice, ministers of state, justices of the Supreme Court, and members of parliament. That is what it says there. It also says, that is Regulation 74 of L.I. 2180, a police service vehicle, a motor vehicle used by the Ghana National Fire Service, a motor vehicle used by the National Ambulance Service. I mean, these we already have in the system. But it goes on from there, giving further details on which other vehicles will be using this. So then it talks about the exemption from the speed limit, which is a crucial bone of contention. It says, an ambulance used by a hospital or clinic, a bullion vehicle registered by the licensing authority, or a motor vehicle, if adherence to those provisions may hinder the purpose for which the motor vehicle is being used. These, again, we already have applicable, but when it comes to the members of parliament and other Article 71 office holders, that's the problem. It also has a focus on self-driving cars, Regulation 25A inserted there. It says, 1, operating a self-driving motor vehicle requires a self-driving motor vehicle operator's license. 2, there are 6 classes of self-driving motor vehicle operators licenses. And 3, the licensing authority may create additional classifications for these licenses. Of course, in terms of self-driven cars, that's a whole new dynamic. The licensing authority will define the restrictions for each class of license. A person can obtain multiple classes of licenses if they pass the necessary tests conducted by the licensing authority. So these are some of the details in there. You want to give us some of the others?
I'm just thinking that we already have some of these directives, or we actually apply some of these.
Right.
I worked in the Ministry of Information under Pius and Hajide once, and I know for a fact that sometimes, in some cases, they're able to arrange motorcade to export them in rare critical cases. So I'm just asking myself, going through this, what's different?
Is there a need for us to make this a mass wholesale thing?
What's really calling for this? And if you want to exempt, or if you want this to apply to all Article 71 office holders, then it should apply to all of them. In the list that we've seen, they've exempted the chairman and other members of the Council of State. They only talked about the president, the vice president, speaker of parliament, deputy speaker, chief justice. I mean, the list that you yourself just went through. So really, what is going on here?
What is going on? Do we have Cesil now? Let's see whether... Mr. Gabra, can you hear me now? Okay, so I guess we'll try to get Mr. Gabra. But if you look at Article 71, and you can take a look at what it lists there in L.I. 74, the amendment article. But if you look at Article 71 office holders, it could be problematic. If this is extended, you remember that Franklin Kujo was saying, this soon devolves and then you have the DC, everybody driving with sirens, right? In the executive, you have the president, vice, cabinet ministers that is MP, non-MP. So let's say all cabinet ministers. Ministers of state, so now Herbert Kappa would be in that category. Minister of state, MP, non-MP, regional ministers. Then you have deputy ministers and deputy regional ministers. Then you also have chairman council of state, member council of state. That's for the executive. I'll get back to the legislature. Cesil Gabra, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you also hear me?
I can hear you. It's been a struggle this morning. What do you make? Initial thoughts on this amendment article? The call has been put on hold.
Please wait.
Hello, Mr. Gabra.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Please go ahead. I was asking your initial thoughts on this LI.
Honestly speaking, I've really been disappointed with Parliament. This bill must not go through. It must be withdrawn as soon as possible because of certain reasons. One, do we have the roads itself? Let me just cite my example, okay, before. A few years, I traveled to the Netherlands and I had to meet the Minister of Transportation of that country. I sat in a train, got to the minister's office, and then I saw someone riding a bicycle close to the minister's office. So the same gentleman who was not in suit, he was just in shirts. And then he greeted me, "Are you Mr. Gabra?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "This is the minister." In fact, I had to remove my tie as soon as possible, and because he was just wearing a shirt. I mean, it was just so simple. And the minister sat in the train and then arrived at his office. That is what we should look at for our developed country than bringing in motorcycles, very expensive, to bless sirens, to hold rather traffic up. I can just imagine if I live somewhere around Adenta and I'm coming to work and then an MP or maybe 6 MPs are also going to work at Parliament, I can just imagine what will happen. That means that every 4 or 5 minutes, you will have to pave that way for the siren or the motorcade to pass by you. And sometimes you just have slim chances of touching your car. Now, the other issue is that what happens if your car is scratched by such vehicles? Are they going to sort people out? Right, that's also another issue for another day. But I could just imagine the number of motorcycles and then the police that will be deployed with the taxpayers' money. This will mean that there will be more traffic, okay? More traffic. Already we are struggling. I was of the view that, so why don't we rather look at the issue on segregated roads for the Ayalolo buses, which has been my issue. And if we are able to do that, I don't think the MP will even have to enjoy a motorcade to his office, right? I'm really disappointed with this bill. And honestly speaking, I pray it is withdrawn and then rewritten that will give that advantage to certain personalities, like what we can see now, which is the Supreme Court,
Right.
Judge, and so on. And I'm very important people. I am not saying the MPs are not important, but I am saying that it will be quite a nuisance for those of us, that's the ordinary people, just hustling in traffic.
Let's stay on the point of the importance of the MPs and ministers, and in fact, all those who fall in this category. And of course, the argument they're making is that the traffic situation in Accra slows down the efficiency. So let's talk about balancing efficiency and safety. How then can these government officials discharge their duties without the bad roads you yourself talked about slows down their access to their various offices? So how do we strike a balance then? What can we do about it if we should not lay this LI?
Well, I remember quite sometime that the ministers were living somewhere around Sakuma or so. I don't know whether they are still around, where they live together. So why don't we use a bus? Why don't we have all of them in one bus and let's say, okay, 8 o'clock, we are going to work, and then we can have at least 2 motorcycles in front of them to take them to work. That alone is good. But then if we have MPA, Minister A, setting off at different times, that will not help us.
Their work takes them to different locations at various times in the day. That's also part of the argument. So we cannot say that there's a bus waiting for them at various or certain points, in the city for them to, convene so that they can be carried to their various offices. Wouldn't that be a bit of a challenge? And also slow down the efficiency that they're trying to achieve over here?
Well, I still believe that something else could be looked at. If we have a whole IGP who lives close to my house, coming to work without any siren, seated even in a different vehicle, then that is a good thing that lawmakers must also look at, that they should rather be very simple, enjoy traffic with us, and then see the issues ahead to reduce the road traffic that we are currently seeing. I do believe it is not necessary for us to applaud this whole idea of them being taken to work in motorcades with sirens. I don't like this, and I think it will rather slow down the productivity of the general public, because we are all going to work. The minister is very important. The MP is also very important. We are also important.
Right.
If we don't work, how can we move the nation forward?
I'll pose this question to you and also bring in Franklin Cudjoe on it, but I'll start with you. Okay, I'll start with you, Cesil Gabra. So I think some things even create the situation we have. One, we give these members of parliament, for example, car loans, among others, right? They take loans for cars and all of that. In other words, we feed into the rhetoric. They get all these vehicles. And of course, the vehicles must go on our roads. So the bit about a bus, I don't know whether ab initio we've not shot ourselves in the foot. Then again, we suffer acute big manism and big womanism. in this country. It is very clear. Oh, even if someone is an assemblyman or woman, they want to, you know. So once we've not cured some of those, look, when I was in Cuba, you would medical doctors, ship captains, very prominent people. We all rode the bus. All of us. We rode the bus. No one was exempt. I mean, who would go for what they call the guagua? We would all be in the guagua heading to, you know, the center of town. And another thing I found interesting, you know why our African leaders, when King Charles was his coronation ceremony and all of that, you remember some African leaders were put in a bus and there was hue and cry about, hey, why were they put in a bus? And maybe the American president was allowed to. We are averse to simplicity. We like big manism and big womanism. So don't you think that is also a crucial part of where we find ourselves? I'll start with you, Cesil Gabra.
Well, honestly speaking, we should just be simple as possible, very simple as possible. And I still stand on what I just mentioned, that this bill must not go through. It should be amended rather and left as it is. We believe strongly that we are all struggling in this country. We all struggle to get to work. I leave my home exactly at 6 o'clock, and it takes me 20 minutes from Spintex to get to Labadi, okay? And I program myself so. And I close again quite late, like 8 o'clock, same 20 minutes, because when I close at 6 o'clock, I will be in traffic till about 7 o'clock, which for me gets me so tired. So I will still ask the parliamentarians that let's all live a very simple life, like the Scandinavia countries that I just mentioned, meeting transport minister who rode his bike. Of course, they have a lot of segregated roads for their bus rapid transit system. So let's live a simple life.
Right.
And the other thing is, in Ghana, in Africa, we have made politics look like real business, that everybody is rather, forcing very hard, having all the ways and means to go into politics. Okay, politics has become one source where people get rich. And if you ask me how they get rich, I don't know, but it is very true. Now you see an ordinary person, now he becomes an assembly member, he's one step. He becomes, a politician, and then another political party will vote for him to be an MP, and then there you go. You will say he's no longer Mr., call him honorable, and therefore he needs a motorcade to work. I don't think it is fair. I mean, look at the number of parliamentarians, and if this person is going to Accra and another MP is also going to airports, and so just look at the chaos that will be created. I don't think that bill is right.
Just before you go, so what's your position? To be blocked for further review, blocked completely, or to be amended? What's your position?
It should be blocked.
Completely blocked, or blocked for further review?
Blocked.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mr. Cesil Gabra, we are grateful for your time. Cesil Gabra is CEO, Top Tech Transport and Logistics. He joined the conversation. Sweetie, right before we go, some things have come to mind. Again, in respect of the things we feel we deserve. You remember when the controller, I think it's controller and accountant generals, they were saying that why should their leadership be getting Toyota Camrys when others were getting 4x4s? I say the mentality is completely off. It's completely wrong. If you look at this L.I, yes, mention is made of the head of state, vice, speaker of parliament, chief justice, ministers of state, justices of the Supreme Court, members of parliament, and then you have the other ones we already know, public, police service vehicles, motor vehicles, fire service, national ambulance service, ambulance, motor vehicle used by other recognized government agencies, and a bullion vehicle. But if you go to Article 71, and if it devolves into that, that is where the problem is. Because then, executive alone, president, vice, cabinet ministers, regional ministers, deputy regional ministers, When you go to the legislature, speaker, first deputy, second deputy speakers, majority, minority leaders, in fact, all of them, basically, 275 of them. You go to the judiciary, chief justice, it mentions here the justices of the Supreme Court. If they had said superior courts, then it could mean High Court, Court of Appeal. But if it devolves, it means Court of Appeal, High Court as well. Then you have the independent constitutional bodies. We don't have here for now OSP, but the OSP will be in there. Auditor General, EC, EC Deputy Chair, Chair Deputy Chair, Shraj Commissioner, Shraj Deputy,
select civil services.
Just imagine all of these people on a daily basis. People.
Then it's a matter of safety on our roads. So how safe will the rest of our citizens be if we have nearly a third of the population rushing to work because their work is more important than us? But this is what we have.
Ayo. Well, this is how we cap off the conversation on this L.I. Of course, as things proceed, we'll bring you much more on it. But